This is just going to be a random rant on various misconceptions that I've either been seeing or have heard about. So, yeah, that's going to be this video. So, this is a screenshot taken from my friend Jaquel, and it's cut off here, but it's basically saying that in the new Agatha show, which I still haven't seen, they call Billy, who is the again, I haven't seen it, but I know in the comics he's like the reincarnated imagining of Wanda Maximoff's son, and that's part of the reason he's so powerful. But yeah, calling that character a witch is an insult to the women who were alive just by existing, and that male witches aren't a thing. Witch has never been a gendered term now because of how the patriarchy works, and if women were gaining a certain amount of power, as well as just in general social constructs at the time, more women were accused, but men were also accused and also unalived. Also, the specifically by men is kind of nonsense. A lot of the accusers were also women. Specifically, when referring to the Salem witch trials, we do have to remember that more than likely, the only person who was possibly a practitioner in all that was Tituba. My apologies if I mispronounced her name, but she was a woman of color that was involved. But even that's an uncertainty. And throughout even the Inquisition and other, famous witch trials that did not take place in America, very limited proof that they were practitioners. For the most part, it was just people trying to get people they considered undesirable out of their community, and they didn't necessarily care what was the result of that. Like, especially when family practices are a thing, this is nonsense. And I hope, like, we can talk about, like, the various, gender and sex paradigms of the occult communities. That's fine. But flat out saying that male witches aren't a thing is nonsense. We also just have to know that a lot of the things that are considered traditional now come from misunderstandings. Like, even, like, as I said before, the Inquisition, where they thought that all Jewish people were sorcerers in some way, at that time they were also appropriating Jewish magics and putting their Christian misunderstandings of Jewish literature to understand the original magics of God as to, break away from Catholicism and so forth. A lot of the Reformation and stuff like that, this happened. And yeah, so a lot of Christian Kabbalah that's well established now isn't Jewish Kabbalah. Like, yes, there is a certain level of, intermingling in conversations nowadays, but yeah, it didn't start off the greatest. Because even something as simple as the roles of what demons are incredibly different in Judaism and Catholicism. And I can say this as someone who was raised in a dual faith household of Ashkenazim Jewish and Irish Catholicism. But also, from what I've noticed, demons seem to have a similar role in the variety of denominations. But yeah, there are plenty of things that are now considered traditional that, when they were made, were misunderstandings of more traditional, older traditions. And even though I feel like that point's half finished, I'm going to move on. I've seen some videos of people worrying about approaching a god in whatever fashion or whatever entity because they're like, I really want to work with them, but I feel like they have to come to me. If you are someone trying to observe the religious practices of a religion, those entities are open to you for you to come to them. That's kind of how religion works. Like, especially since, like, these are gods, then I might be talking about this mostly from, like, obviously as I practice Norse and Irish paganism, that's my main draw point. But in our traditions, you do have to get their attention. You kind of have to be the one to start the conversation, even if it's just a conversation and not a working. Obviously, this is different for like things you have to be initiated into, but if for whatever reason you feel that an entity from a closed practice is trying to contact you, get in touch with someone in that tradition, and they'll probably, okay, I won't guarantee that they will help you, but if you're serious about it, you'll go through the works of being like, okay, is this like supposed to be just a one time thing of something I'm supposed to do that this entity is with? Or is this practice something I want to consider? And they'll help you. Because here's the thing, like I've even had people come to me and they're like, oh, I feel like Dambala's coming and wants to guide me. And I kind of have to sit there and be like, that's not something I do. Here's the number of a hoodoo practitioner that I know is, runs a shop in a major city that's nearby. This is probably going to be more who you want to talk to than me. And whatever they do with that is going to be their business. But if you feel serious about it, yeah. And of course, the variety of these more open traditions, faiths, paths, whatever. Yeah, get their attention. Just, look up what offerings and libations are good for them, and you can start the conversation. I've also seen a lot of videos that specifically call Satesh or Sutek or Set, however you want to refer to them, specifically as an evil entity. And there is some historical reference, and obviously there's the well-known myth of Satek being the reason Osiris is Osiris, but um, that is possibly a myth that was started because basically the groups of Osiris and Satesh were rivals for political power. So yes, he may have been considered more evil during certain periods of time, but he wasn't always that way. Yes, he was chaotic, but it was viewed as necessary chaos, as that was a part of life. He obviously wasn't in league with the Voldemort snake of Kemetic mythology, but yeah. In fact, he actively worked against the Voldemort serpent. He wasn't necessarily evil. And of course, this is another misconception that may just be my UPG on the subject, but a lot of people will put like the necessary chaos of Loki. And I'm not entirely sure if I would read it the same way. And I find it very interesting that people are reading it that way and then kind of taking it as fact, and that's how they're reading everything with Loki in it. Because Norse mythology doesn't necessarily have as much the gods are important in the cosmic balance of things, more of just they do things and there is a cosmology. And, like, again, I don't think Loki is evil. Just, again, he is chaotic in the variety of stories that he's in, and it's kind of for a purpose, and he fixes his mistakes, but at the same time, he kind of has to be goaded into doing so. And there's a lot, but I do remember reading a translation where when he was asked, why he specifically did everything that led to the effects of killing Balder, he replied, I don't know, with kind of an emphasis that it was literally not something he had complete control over. But that may have been like my own implying things. It's been a while since I've read that specific translation, and I unfortunately lost that particular translation in a flood. I know I've talked about this before, but I do think it needs to be stated again because it is a misconception. You do not have to be a witch and a pagan in any like real fashion. You don't have to practice magic to be a pagan. Many people weren't. Practicing magic was kind of a niche thing even in historical pagan communities. I apologize that this is a 10-minute video of just me rambling, but I have enough time to be like, if there are any misconceptions that you've seen or have heard about or just questions you want to ask me, be free to put them in the comments. I'm always good for questions. I enjoy, spreading knowledge, and I do my best to make sure, like, hey, this is specifically my opinion, or hey, this, I believe, is backed up by enough educational stuff that you can find. So yeah, thank you for watching, and if you have any questions, leave them.